Okay, folks, let's get started. My name's Al Winchick, and I am the new NRESi Research Manager, and I would like to welcome you to this colloquium, which is a joint presentation as part of the Inspiring Women Among Us events. And I am going to turn the mic over briefly to Art Ferdine, who wants to tell you about all the posters that are going on outside.
So there's going to be a poster session after the talk today. So I encourage you all to stop by. It's all of the students in NRES 700, which is Research in Natural Resources and Environmental Studies. And they've all put together a poster of their intended research or research topic. And they're really a wide variety of really interesting topics. So I hope you'll stop by on your way out of the room. They're just right there outside of this set of doors here. Just stop by, ask them a question. There's quite a range in there. I think you'll find that interesting. We're also going to head to the Thirsty Moose, I think, after that. That's what we're planning. So feel free to join us after the poster session as well if you want to partake in that.
And there will be food and refreshments at the poster session too. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Zoe.
There are donuts and muffins in the back there in case you missed them. And I'm going to volunteer Peter Jackson to count the people in the room for me, please, and tell me after how many people were here. So thank you all very much for coming today. I am not the one doing the introduction, but I just wanted to put a couple of events on your radar as we look to close out Inspiring Women Among Us next Wednesday on November 25th. So obviously we have an exciting speaker today, and related to that, tomorrow here on campus at the UNBC library from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. we have an editathon. The poster's on one of the doors for this room. And what that means is we will be learning from Patrick how to create and edit Wikipedia entries, and then we'll be editing in community, adding names under the banner of women in science and environment, and particularly with attention to CanCon or Canadian content. So if you have any names of female scientists, activists, advocates, researchers, or related organizations that you think should be Wikipedia entries, please tell me after we're done here so we can add them to our expanding list. And then on Sunday, we have a talk on the Hometown Project at 3 o'clock in the public library. And then on Monday, we have Deandra Oliver and Laura Supergia leading a workshop called Radical Self-Advocacy for Self-Identified Women from 10 to 12 here in the NUSC boardroom. So if you don't know what some of those words are, I recommend you attend. And then also we have the Hometown Project coming to both UNBC and CNC in our winter garden and the gathering place at CNC. 11:30 to 1 at UNBC and 2 to 3:30 on Monday to do participatory planning exercises, so you can come and fill out some problem, action, solution cards and talk about cities and how gender fits in or should fit into city planning. At 3 to 5, we have the Women in Leadership panel from the CDI here in room 6205. And on Tuesday night, we have the film The Mask You Live In here in Weldwood 7238 from 6 to 9, and that's about cultures of masculinity. There's also a film tonight. Some of you I know saw it when we showed it here on campus. We also showed it out in Terrace. It's tonight at 7 o'clock at CNC in the Cinema CNC room. I think it's called The Power of One Voice, the film about Rachel Carson. And then closing out next Wednesday, we have the very somber but important UNBC recognition of the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women and the Montreal Massacre, which will be from 12 to 1:30 in the Winter Garden with a sponsored reception to follow, and that's sponsored by the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists. And the last thing I want to do is just thank our biggest sponsors and encourage you to look at our website for our additional community sponsors, many of whom are here on campus. So I just want to thank the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions, BC Hydro, and the UNBC Office of the President. And t-shirts are here if you would like to buy one. They are in the larger sizes, but I'm sure you can craft them into something smaller and more beautiful. They are $15. and half the proceeds go towards perpetuating this series of events, and half go to a special award for women facing significant challenges or barriers to obtaining or going back to an education. Exclusive, very exclusive. And before I pass the mic over, the last thing I want to remind you of is if you are asking a question, please try to hold the mic like this and make sure the mic is on, because the people in the abyss need you to speak into the mic in order to hear what you're saying. And so now I'm going to pass the mic to Sinead Earley, who is teaching my classes for me this year as I enjoy sabbatical, and was also savvy enough to connect us with her brother, who she will introduce to you now.
Okay, thank you, Zoe. Again, welcome to the IWAU NRES Joint Colloquium. I am totally, quite entirely excited to introduce my brother, Patrick Earley. We've had a lot of opportunity to collaborate over the recent past, over the last 5 or 10 years. Myself working within institutions, within the university setting, institutions of post-secondary education, and having that sort of heightened interaction between student and teacher, and Patrick as an advocate for, I would almost even say, the kind of democratization of knowledge, right? So the idea of making information accessible, irregardless of race, class, ethnicity, gender. So trying to collaborate with him as much as possible as far as kind of drawing from his passion and creativity as far as that's concerned. As far as the medias, the variety of medias in which he's been able to convey that throughout his life and his career, he completed a degree in film production at UBC, as well as a diploma. He has a diploma of library and information technology from Langara. He has worked within the Vancouver Public Library system for a variety of for numerous years, and then was hired on by the Wikimedia Foundation 2.5 years ago. Which has, I mean, at least for our family, has been a pretty amazing place to see him flourish as a professional. And he has been a long-time Wikipedia prior to that sort of formal employment. I would almost say obsessive, obsessively volunteering his time and kind of passion for the production of knowledge by just editing, right? Quite prolifically. So he has currently his focus, which I think is absolutely sort of support him fully in this, is on reducing the amount of harassment and incivility in the editing community. Today he is talking to us. I'll let him kind of take the reins at this point, but really addressing particularly gender parity, right, in editing and in content, right? So in really trying to diversify those people that are actually contributing to Wikipedia, but also really diversifying that information that is coming out of that organization. So Patrick, here you are. Welcome. I'm really, really glad to see you here.
Thanks so much, Sinead. Well, thank you all for having me. Sinead's been talking over the last 3 or 4 months about how much she loves it up here and how impressed she is with the academic community up here and the campus and the vitality and life you guys have up here. So I'm really happy to be presenting to you guys. So I'll use the standard joke that Jimmy Wales uses when he introduces a Wikipedia presentation. Have you guys heard of Wikipedia? You probably have. Has anyone in the room actually edited Wikipedia before? So not bad at all, 5 people. But you all knew you could, right? Most of you knew you could. Why didn't you? I assume that people have a lot of reasons. They sort of think, you know, am I really qualified to do this sort of thing? You know, am I going to be able to figure out all the technical aspects of it? And so one of the things I'd like to emphasize is that it is available to everyone. We all have the ability to go in there. Now, you have to take a little bit of responsibility when you go in there because people will be reading what you write. So you have to sort of take it fairly seriously. And that's sort of what got me fairly addicted. So we'll start by actually the big question that a lot of people have is like, who are all these people writing these Wikipedia articles? So I'll just give you a little bit of background for myself. 2008, I was in library, just getting into library school. I was, I was single, I had a lot of time on my hands. And I started editing Wikipedia, and like, part of me felt like, this is dumb. You can't just be sitting inside on a computer all day. But then I started to realize that I could share something with the world. So Sinead and I grew up in Kamloops, or just east of Kamloops, and every year that the Adams River, you guys all know the Adams River by the Shuswap Lakes, it's, depending on the year, it's the largest salmon run in the sockeye, largest sockeye salmon run in North America. Our elementary school classes would go out there and check out the river, and it's actually a really visceral experience, like literally, because like it stinks. Like there's a lot of fish in the water and rotting outside. So it was always something very important to me. In 2008, the article for the Adams River was 2 lines long, and it didn't even mention salmon. And so this is sort of where I'm just like, the world really needs to know a little bit more about the Adams River. So I spent quite a bit of time building up the Adams River article. And in the process, I got to read a lot about the river, got to know so much more about it, and I got to interact with the rest of the Wikipedia community. So you see here, there's a map here. I don't do maps. I didn't make that map. Another volunteer just showed up out of the blue and said, hey, do you want a map for that article? And I said, sure, go ahead. And he made an open source, freely licensed map. So, I mean, you guys can use that map for your own purposes if you'd like. So that's sort of when the hook really sat for me. I'm just like, okay, there's other people on here, and they're all helpful. So that's sort of my, the origin story of my Wikipedia editing. But I'm definitely not the only one out there. So one thing that some people are a bit confused about is like, they think there must be some people in California getting paid to write these articles or something. No, the content you're reading is all written by volunteers, by people volunteering their time. At this point, we have about 280 Wikipedias in different languages. I'd only say about 250 are sort of active enough to say that they're the real deal. But 80,000 contributors, and these are people that sort of contribute more than 5 edits a month. And so that's around the world in 250 languages. Wikipedia sort of peaked. There was a lot of people adding content, sort of 2006 to 2009. Big reason there was that you could. Like, as I say, the Adams River article was 2 lines long. You could just jump in and add a lot of stuff. Once things started to fill out a bit more, the numbers fell off. And there's other internal changes to policies and referencing requirements that sort of made the barrier a little bit higher, the barrier to entry. But luckily, by about 2013 or 2014, things stabilized. So I'm just going to play a quick video. Now, I'll warn you guys, this is something the Foundation produced. There's a little bit of propaganda here, but I think it's a fairly well done video. But what this video does is introduce you to a group of people who edit Wikipedia. I think it's actually number 7. I don't know why we put number 5 in there.
La Paz, Bolivia. Nairobi, Kenya.
Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Milan, in Italy.
South Africa.
Poland.
Japan.
Armenia.
Brazil.
Russia.
Botswana. Israel.
Uzbekistan.
Hong Kong.
Istanbul.
Mexico.
Chattanooga, Tennessee.
At the beginning of my joining to Wikipedia, 2008, I started many articles. One of them, I think it was about a lady called Maryam Noor. We didn't have an article about it, and this was my first article. So I forgot about it. Maybe 2 or 3 years later, I passed by this article. I was shocked. More than 100,000 people read this article. They used it. So they got their information from this article. They passed by this article. So you feel like you affected and influenced more than 100,000 people.
I was just so terrified when I pushed the edit button for the first time. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to ruin everything. That can't work. I can't do it.
Wikipedia is an open source where everyone can throw in his or her idea, and then somebody else comes in and polishes on that idea to make it superb.
There are, thousands of people working every day, every hour, every minute on Wikipedia to improve it.
A lot of it is the volunteerism. This is a unique way to volunteer.
It brings together both professionals and amateurs who have a love for a particular topic.
The people who had different opinions in the beginning start to collaborate.
A lot of what you would assume a large internet corporation would handle is handled by volunteers like me.
You just can't say, okay, I'm right, you're wrong, this is my version of the article.
If there's an issue of bias, then somebody has probably flagged it, and if not, now I can flag it too.
You've got hundreds and thousands of people seeing that and correcting it.
And then I pushed the button and bam, the journey started, and it was great.
First I started with probability. The first article I started as probability.
One of my main articles I wrote on Wikipedia was the article on stab wounds.
I write about fly fishing, Montana history, national park history, Yellowstone.
And the utilized crops.
Chess players.
Biodiversity.
Military history topics.
Armenian history.
Roman history. Judges.
Communication.
Biographies.
Football.
Ireland.
Pennsylvania.
Mostly photography.
Pink Floyd.
Baking, because I love to bake.
Nuclear weapons and radioactivity. And whitewater kayaking.
There's all this information that's out there that's kind of scattered, and we're putting it together in one place.
We are offering free knowledge for everyone in their own language so they can use it.
Everyone is benefited by this, whether they are rich or poor.
For-profit companies have different motivations and different requirements.
From the Wikimedia Foundation, I don't take a salary, and I also don't even...
I'm going to cut off Jimmy there. So the rest of this sort of is a little bit of advertising for Wikipedia, and that wasn't really the point I was trying to make here. So there is something a little bit misleading about this video. Now, you saw a fairly good mix of folks in there in terms of diversity. Unfortunately, that is not the reality. So 2011, the UN, United Nations University, I don't really know much about them, but they helped us do some research, helped the foundation do some research. This is a pretty sad pie chart. If any of you were at Dr. Birdall's presentation this afternoon, I guess this would line up with long-haul trucking or something like that. So the question is, Wikipedia was sort of a clean slate, right? Like, you can't blame these sort of 100-year-old institutional realities for this problem. So if it was a clean slate and it was an open project that anyone could join, how did it get this bad? And that's a very intriguing question, and a question that doesn't have a lot of clear answers. But one major factor, in my opinion, and I think other researchers' opinion, is that Wikipedia started 2001. It'll be 15 in January. Most of the early adopters of Wikipedia, the early editors, came from the tech sector. They were the people who first got excited about the idea of Wikipedia. A lot of people in academia, when they heard the idea of Wikipedia, they're just like, oh my God, this is the worst idea ever. And maybe some people do still feel that way. But unfortunately, not unfortunately, but it was a small subset of people that jumped in right away to edit. And to edit Wikipedia, to get into the content, it uses a system of markup. And it's a simple markup system. It's sort of HTML for dummies, but it is still a markup system, and it's only good for wikis. It doesn't work anywhere else. And so that was also a bit of a barrier. What type of person is going to learn a markup system, a markup language for one website? And so it did sort of self-select for a very small group of people. And it was also people who had experience using markup language. And the programming world, especially in the late 90s, it hasn't really changed that much, but especially in the late 90s, was ridiculously male-dominated, sort of 95%. And so that was the early group. And in a lot of ways, they set the tone. Who knows who this guy is? We all use his products, regularly. He didn't make any money off them. This is Linus Torvalds. So he developed what's called the Linux kernel. What that is sort of a foundation that you can build operating systems from. And he built it as an open source product, which means anyone can work on it, but no one can he didn't own it, and no one can sell it. So it's a free, open source, open access programming project. So any of us who have Android phones, the Android operating system is based on the Linux kernel. The servers we use like we don't know we're using them, but they're used every time we're on Facebook, on social media. Those servers most often use Linux kernels. So Linus Torvalds, I don't really want to throw him under the bus here, but I want to sort of set him up as an example. So he would be fairly emblematic of the programming world. So here's a quote from Linus. I'd like to be a nice person and curse less and encourage people to grow rather than telling them that they're idiots. I'm sorry, I tried, it's just not in me. So I don't think Linus is a terrible person or anything, but he does have this idea that social niceties, being pleasant with each other, is just completely not necessary. And in the programming world, this has some actually practical roots. If you're building code, building a program, and your colleague has written some bad code, you got to stop them right now. Because if someone builds something on that foundation, on that faulty foundation, then you're going to have massive, massive troubles later. So the idea of calling out something early, and you call it out hard, and you don't mince your words, is very much a respected thing in the programming world. But the rest of the world doesn't work that way. And so a lot of the folks who got into Wikipedia early had this mentality, and that sort of set the culture and set the tone. So what does this sort of mean to the public? So I'm going to show you a video. Now I'm just going to warn you, there's a little bit of sadness in this video. This video is about my colleague Adrienne, who was very concerned about the gender gap, and she came from a very sort of classical academic background. And unfortunately, she passed away, but that's not the sort of the key of the story here. So I'm just going to let you guys watch a small PBS piece on Adrienne's work, and she's sort of
grown dramatically.
Lets you know what the real issues are here.
English language encyclopedia with more than 4.5 million articles, all of them written by volunteers. As the site proudly states, it's the free encyclopedia that anyone can edit. It turns out that most of the editors are men, and the site is now facing criticism that, as a result, women's stories are not being adequately told. The NewsHour's Tracy Wolf reports.
Rebecca Morris is a prominent contemporary American artist. With a career spanning the last 20 years, her paintings can be viewed in galleries and museums around the globe, including the Museum of Contemporary Art Los Angeles and the Goetz Collection in Munich, Germany. And if you Google her, immediately images of her work and links to interviews appear. But prior to March 9th of this year, Rebecca Morris didn't have a Wikipedia page. Some say that this omission is a small example of a very large problem, the lack and participation on one of the world's most popular websites.
Number of women, but just increasing the number of women isn't necessarily going to improve the fact that content on Wikipedia itself is skewed. In that case, actually...
Adrienne Wadowitz was a dedicated Wikipedian, writing and editing content on Wikipedia as one of the nearly 75,000 active volunteer editors.
I'm one of the 15 top contributors of high-quality content.
And being a female editor put Wadowitz on a very short list. A study published in 2010 by the United Nations University and by the Wikimedia Foundation, the organization that runs Wikipedia, discovered that less than 13% of contributors are women. The same study found that the average Wikipedia editor is male and in his mid-20s.
That means that voices and perspectives are being left out.
Wadowitz first started editing Wikipedia 10 years ago while working towards a PhD in English literature. This led her to writing entries for authors like William Shakespeare and Jane Austen. She worked alongside dozens of other contributors on Shakespeare's page. Her experience working on Jane Austen's entry was very different.
I and one other person worked on the Jane Austen article. So it's a pretty interesting dichotomy to me. People read Austen all the time, but they don't go to Wikipedia to edit it.
Fewer women contributors, she said, inevitably influences what ends up on Wikipedia. One example, noted by a media columnist from the New York Times in 2011, is the lengthy descriptions in Wikipedia about The Sopranos, compared to the much shorter entry for the more female-oriented Sex and the City. Wadowitz said to attract more women editors, attitudes within the Wikipedia community need to change. This became clear when she revealed her gender after writing anonymously for several years.
What happened once you identified yourself specifically as a woman editor?
Well, there was a big change in how people treated me and how they viewed the information that I put on Wikipedia. There were a lot more questions about what I was adding. There was a lot more skepticism. And a lot of times when I made arguments about including a specific piece of content or excluding a specific piece of content, I was accused of being hysterical or emotional, things that had never happened before.
After the Wikimedia study came out, detailing how few women were editing, then Executive Director Sue Gardner set a goal of increasing female contributors to 25% by 2015.
So I think one thing Wikipedia has to do as a culture is ask itself, are we willing to be this self-selecting and be this small? We can have many more people if we're willing to be a more welcoming community.
To help achieve this, many groups have organized editathons, events where experienced Wikipedians and first-timers get together to help each other write new content. Editathons are not gender exclusive, but increasingly women are recruiting other women to participate.
Do you think that more should be happening in order to try to increase the participation of women as editors and content on Wikipedia?
In one respect, I would say that we need to add the voice of feminists to Wikipedia, who are going to talk about women as underrepresented groups.
This editathon, held at the Museum of Contemporary Art Los Angeles in March, focused on creating entries for LA artists, many of them women. And that's how Rebecca Morris finally got her page in the world's largest encyclopedia.
I know something about how the first encyclopedias were developed in the 18th century, and those encyclopedias almost completely excluded the history of women. And it's one argument that we make all the time when we're talking both to Wikipedians and people outside Wikipedia. We say, look, if we want to include all of these other narratives besides the typical narrative that we usually tell of dead white men, we've got to get it in there now.
If you want to weigh in about this controversy, go online to newshour.pbs.org. And a very sad note, a few weeks after we taped our interview with Adrienne Wadowitz, she died after a rock climbing accident. We broadcast today's report with the encouragement of her family.
Yeah, so one less female editor, unfortunately. Trying to get to the bottom of this problem is really, really difficult, because you have to make a lot of there's a lot of gender assumptions involved too, like maybe just women don't like computers, or women don't like confrontation. And so one thing that is fairly evident and that isn't terribly controversial is that Wikipedia has, in a sense, failed to create a friendly community. And I think that sort of leads back to Mr. Torvalds and that sort of attitude in the coding world that it is not necessary to be nice to your colleagues. It's just necessary to be right. And that sort of philosophy is really, really, really dominant within the Wikipedia community. But despite that, since day one, Wikipedia has had one of its 5 pillars, civility as one of the 5 pillars. What we found as a community is that it's terribly difficult to enforce civility because it can be argued and lawyered. We actually have a term, wiki-lawyering. There's a lot of ambiguities in a behavioral guideline like that. It's not very specific or easy to enforce. And so some people within the community say it's a bit of a dead letter. I completely disagree, and I'm working in the opposite direction. But the technical barrier is intense. So what we're looking at here is the sort of the first, well, not the first, but the top end of the Marie Curie article. So would most of you feel terribly confident jumping into there and making some changes to that page? No, probably not. I mean, I didn't when I started. I like changed typos and like jumped away from the computer to see what happened. And so, I mean, that really is, unless you come from a very technical background, that is your only way in, is very slowly and gradually figuring out what things do. A lot of these are templates, unfortunately. They don't display very nicely, but they're terribly useful things. But it takes a long time to sort of figure out why they're there and why this looks so ugly. So the foundation has been doing some work on that front, and that's one of the first projects I helped with when I joined the foundation. It's called the visual editor. So who here uses WordPress to blog? WordPress figured this out, what, 8 years ago, that they had to have a sort of a double system, where one system for the techie folks, the folks who knew how to code, and one system for people who just didn't like that sort of stuff. So a visual editor. The other term people use is a what you see is what you get editor, which is shortened as WYSIWYG, which is just like, come on, guys. So I'm just going to show you what this visual editor means. Oh, I better log in first. Everyone turn their heads. No, you can't see my password. I call myself the interior. It's pretty pretentious to have the definite article in your username, but I'm from the interior. No, let's not remember her. Oops. Maybe I should remember my own password. Oh, sorry, this is going a bit slow. Is this guy really a Wikipedia expert? He can't even log into Wikipedia. So visual editor is not finished yet, because there's a lot of work to do, because we're building on that markup system, which is quite a challenge. But you can see now I actually have 2 edit buttons, because I have visual editor enabled. If I click on this, I get some very word processor-y type things that we're all familiar with, you know how you bold something. And we have some really neat features now. If I can add a citation very, very quickly and easily. So this is sort of one of the great advancements that's been made on the technical side, is to make it more accessible for everyone to edit. And so you guys should know that this is available out there now. And if the markup is what was keeping you from editing Wikipedia, you now have another choice, which is, I think, is a huge thing. But the technical side of it is just one part of it, and I don't know if it's even the most major part of it. The cultural barriers, the social side of Wikipedia, I think is perhaps not what stops people from joining, but probably what stops people from doing it long term and drives away a lot of people. And I would say drives away a lot of women. It's a very male-oriented, very male-dominated culture, and has a lot of very sort of male things going on. Now, of course, Wikipedia isn't the only place that has this problem. Online interaction, since people started talking to each other on the internet, has always been rough and tumble. Is anyone here familiar with Usenet, which was sort of a discussion forum in the 90s? That's sort of when a lot of the online culture, in terms of how people deal with each other, started to coalesce. And the idea that it was a Wild West, that you could do anything, say anything, and people found that very liberating. They couldn't do that in real life. You couldn't just walk down the street and call someone an idiot, or you could, but it's not a smart move. But you could do that on the internet, and nothing bad would happen to you. You might get called something back, but you might enjoy that. So the sort of pugilistic approach to communication became very dominant. And the idea that you would sort of police how people talk and interact was very much opposed by a lot of early internet users. They saw the internet as a solution to a world that was censoring people, that was controlling people's thoughts. And so the internet was seen as sort of the way out. And I think something like Wikipedia probably couldn't have started and grown without that sort of really open Wild West mentality where people could just go in and try anything, break anything, be bold. But I think all of us who spend any time online are realizing that there's a very, very major dark side to this complete freedom of communication. So has anyone been following the Gamergate controversy? A little bit? It's just super intense and hard to describe, so I'm going to give you a very quick description. Online gaming is another area that is very male-dominated, but that is changing. A lot of women and girls love gaming and love gaming with other people. And so they're joining these online communities that are almost all male, and they're getting harassed. They're getting, once someone finds out that they're a woman, horrible things are said to them. And so a few sort of techie feminists got involved in this debate. A Canadian, actually, Anita Sarkeesian, and a few others, started calling out this and criticizing this and saying, you know, what sort of world are we building here that is so completely unsafe for women to even enter? And the backlash against that was intense. The gaming community, mostly the male, or almost all the male-dominated side of the gaming community, lashed out very hard against these women, criticizing their culture, to the point of death threats, of doxing, so sort of publishing personal details, not just about them, but about their family, their mom and dad, calling in bomb threats. There's this concept now known as swatting. You guys know what swatting is? It's abusing the police. So you find out where Anita lives. You call up the cops and say there's a hostage situation in her house. You give them the address. The cops show up in their full gear, break down the door, guns at the ready. You know, they could not through any fault of their own accidentally shoot someone. And so this is the sort of the level that this anger and vitriol went to. And it's still ongoing right now. And unfortunately, a lot of it, not a lot of it, but some of it spilt over into Wikipedia. We realized that some of our male editing base actually felt sort of similar to some of these gentlemen. And that's very, very, very troubling. For some reason, it seems to me that, and it's probably logically not true, but that it seems worse in Wikipedia somehow that the online gaming world is just sort of a fantasy land and people can be horrible over there if they want to, but somehow Wikipedia seems a bit more holy or something to me. But in the end, it doesn't make a difference. That, you know, why are people treating each other this way online? And so the foundation, as you sort of heard in that video, that introductory video, this is not a top-down organization, right? There's 200 employees in San Francisco, 80,000 editors. The editing community has its own sort of hierarchy, but that hierarchy is very flat. And so it's crowdsourced, right? And so it's very hard to control people's behavior in any sort of significant way. And controlling behavior is actually sort of not what Wikipedians want the project to be about. So it's a big challenge for the foundation to sort of figure out how they can start making things better. And I think the healthiest way to look at it is to say, you know, how did Wikipedia solve its other problems, its technical problems, its sourcing problems, its accuracy problems that aren't solved, but that are getting better? It was through the volunteer base. And so what we've been trying to do is empower more volunteers. And unfortunately, in this world, empowering means money. So we've been running a grants program. This is something that my colleague Siko set up in last June. And we've been running, it's pretty open-ended. If you have an idea of how you can sort of address the gender gap on Wikipedia, we'll very likely fund you to figure it out. But of course, this is not going to solve it on its own. Now, a wonderful part of this is that, of course, the editors sometimes take things into their own hands. And so the more publicity the gender gap got and the sort of the content gap or the result of the gender gap, a lot of conscientious Wikipedians, and I definitely want to emphasize this, that there are some sort of unsavory types in the Wikimedia community, but the vast majority of people there are awesome, awesome people. and they're super hardworking, and they really have the public good in mind. So we see projects like this start up organically, no money involved. And so this is my friend Emily. She is indexing all the prominent women scientists who don't have articles and making a sort of searchable list for them, and just making it very easy for an editor to come in and create some content about a female scientist. But again, this is sort of incremental. Here's another project. Women in Red just refers to the fact that, you know, when you're on Wikipedia and someone doesn't have an article, their name shows up in red quite often, so that's what that refers to. This is Rosie. She's taken it a bit wider. She's just saying all women. So there is a lot of sort of organic groundswell among the editing community to fix this. Now, this is sort of a good segue to talk about editathons. So we look at this picture here. Does it sort of fit the pie chart we looked at earlier? It's pretty much the opposite. So this is a social in-person event. And again, I don't want to make any gender assumptions about why a lot of women showed up to this, but they did. And in general, it seems that sort of more social in-person events seem to attract more women into editing. And so the editathon model just means you partner with a library, community center, get a space going with some good internet, and you get together and you have a little Wikipedia party. You edit Wikipedia, you support each other, you share knowledge, you help each other edit. You teach new people how to edit. It's a support, a real-time, in real flesh support group, which appears at this point to be a model that is more appealing to a diverse range of people. So tomorrow you can sort of see this in action. I don't know how many in the crowd would be able to make it, but I'd love it if you guys all came. I'll be doing a little tutorial sort of on the mechanics of editing, how you get that visual editor set up, what the sort of sourcing requirements are, because there's a lot of rules in Wikipedia. Some people are annoyed by that fact, but really that's how Wikipedia sort of got better. I don't know if anyone recalls reading Wikipedia articles in 2005, 2006. They were a mess of unsourced and unreferenced information. There's still articles like that, but I think hopefully everyone's noticing that the quality is creeping up, and that has a lot to do with the tightening of rules, especially in regards to references and sourcing. And so you do want to spend a bit of time figuring that out before you write a lot of content, but it's not that crazy. And I mean, the fun way to get into it sort of stress-free is to make a lot of small changes to, you know, typos, misspellings. We've all seen them in articles, and they pop out to our eyes, but we don't sort of think that we can fix them quite easily, but we can. And yeah, we're going to focus mostly on sort of Canadian scientists if we can, but Canadian women of prominence in any field. And so I'll be there to help sort of facilitate the editing part. We're going to have a couple librarians on hand to help with finding sources. And we're going to have pizza as well. So I encourage you guys to all join us. And with that, I think I'll open it up to any questions.
Thanks very much for that presentation. It was fascinating, and at least for me, I learned something really important about this thing that could be corrected in Wikipedia, and I've thought about, and my colleague has also thought about using Wikipedia for teaching. And I think when we finally do, I think we'll make sure there'll be an extra gender content component. My question is actually about Wikipedia more broadly. I'm just curious about the Wikimedia Foundation. So about once a year we get encouraged to donate money to it. I personally have done it several times.
Thank you.
And then you just mentioned that there's about 200 employees and maybe no other nothing else. So I'm just curious, and since there's no advertisements and it's one of the, I don't know if it's number 7, the most visited websites or something like that, this is one of the world's biggest websites, and it only has 200 employees and no advertising. I was just wondering, does Wikipedia generate revenue from certain, does Google donate $1 million a year to it, or if you could speak about the institution a bit more broadly.
So a lot of these questions were sort of figured out on the fly. Jimmy Wales, when he started Wikipedia, had a different idea. He thought it was going to be much more like a traditional encyclopedia, where you'd sort of pay experts to write content. He just made a little wiki part of it, where people could suggest edits and sort of correct content. That part took off. The expert part didn't take off because, well, the experts actually just fought with each other. And they wrote 11 articles in 2 years. So 2003, Jimmy was faced with an interesting quandary. The site was getting quite popular. People were reading it. All these volunteers were coming in to add content. So we had to buy more server space. He had to rent more server space. And he realized he's going to need some money for that. So he had 2 choices, ads or go the nonprofit route. And I don't know what was going through his head at the time. I think the Spanish editors told him, under no circumstances will you do this, and if you do, we'll just, because the content's all openly licensed, so you can just, what's called fork it. You could just take it over to another website and start from there. And so I don't know if that was a big factor. I think Jimmy actually did have some good thoughts in his head for humanity, and so he went the nonprofit route. So he set it up as a nonprofit. He transferred ownership to the Wikimedia Foundation in 2004. So yeah, as the project grew, realized that there has to be a bit more money. You have to, the more people who want to use the site, you have to get more server space so the speed stays up. You have to start having a legal department. You have articles about real people. You have defamation and libel showing up in these articles. You have to have a little bit of top-down guidance on certain things. And so he actually hired a Canadian woman from CBC's journalism, the online, the cbc.ca. She ran the first online CBC News site, Sue Gardner. And so he sort of put it up to Sue. He's just like, how are you going to do this, Sue? Are you going to go to big philanthropists and nonprofits and get some money? Now, the problem with that model is that if, say, the Knight Foundation or Stanton Foundation gives $10 million to another nonprofit, there's a little bit of a price there. Usually there's a board seat. There's some sort of control over the organization. And Sue realized that the Wikipedia editors could not support that they needed their independence, that they couldn't be beholden even to a nice foundation, right? And so she made the decision that it would be sort of the PBS model, where you survive off small donations from the public. And the reason she went that route is because she knew that the public had different expectations. So, you might give $20 to Wikipedia to keep it running, but you aren't going to demand anything of Wikipedia for that $20. You're not going to say, I need this content to read like this. I paid you $20, change it. People will give that money and sort of step back and let it happen. That doesn't happen with large donations. And especially something like Google. Although we are very sort of integrated with Google's products and Google search, we are completely independent from them. And I believe that Sergey Brin and who's the other fellow? Larry Page, the Google founders, have donated personally quite a bit to the foundation, but just as you have, through that stream. So that's where we are right now. 200 people is much larger than we were 5 years ago, and there's been some growing pains for sure, but it's the coolest job I've ever had, and it's a great place to work.
So thank you for a very, very interesting and illuminating talk. I have another question, similar. It was something you brought up with this idea of people being liable, because you are talking about real people. Mm-hmm. Because my immediate thought was like, oh, maybe I'll go and I'll write an article about my mom, because my mom's a scientist and she's worked in the field for very many years, and so she's quite well respected in her field. And I know a lot about her, so it'd be easy. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, maybe my mom doesn't want that information online. So how does that work when we write these articles?
And this was something that wasn't put in place in 2001. There was no plan for that situation. And it actually took a few scandals for a bit of framework to be set up around that. And so I'll give you one sort of short summary of one of the scandals. Forget his first name properly now. Joseph Thigenstaller. He was a journalist and a political aide in the US government. He was part of the Kennedy administration. For almost 6 months in his article on Wikipedia, there was an allegation that he was involved in the Kennedy assassination. Now, this wasn't true. I hope it wasn't true. He definitely said it wasn't true. I think, as far as I know, he loved Kennedy and didn't kill him. But it's not very funny that was in his article. And so that was about 2006. So the community sort of had a little reckoning period. They're like, well, we don't really want to be just people started calling it a defamation engine, where you could just create defamation about people and spread it around the world. So the foundation, the editors, and the board sort of worked together on a new policy called the Biographies of Living Persons policy. And what it does is it sets a minimum benchmark for what a biography of a living person needs to have. And so, to your mom's case, we have to prove that she's notable before she can have an article. And notable, we actually get very sort of specific about that. So she has to have been covered in a significant way by sources independent to her or her work. So, her university bio wouldn't be enough. It would have to be something written about her by someone that's not associated with her. And so what that does is sort of create a baseline of people that are above that level and below that level. And that was a sort of a defensive measure against that sort of thing. The other thing was that the sourcing requirements for biographies was raised. And so you had to have what we consider a reliable source. And so we sort of defined that down to having some editorial oversight, some sort of history of producing. Same way librarians qualify what's reliable and what's not. A history of publishing, a reputation for accuracy. And so that was the evolution of sourcing. That was the beginning of the evolution of sourcing. And luckily, I think, I was really happy about this change. That sort of filtered out to the wider project too, where these referencing requirements were raised up a bit. And you couldn't use a blog to source anything anymore, right? You couldn't use Snopes or, even though Snopes is kind of cool, but I mean, you'd have to spend a lot more time on your research and find proper, reliable sources before you could add these facts. Now, of course, Wikipedia has 5 million articles, and there's only 80,000 people, right? So problems do creep in. And so we do quite often at the foundation have article subjects writing in saying, there's something really bad in my article. And so those problems do still show up. But I think because of Wikipedia's popularity, ubiquity, like everyone's reading it, those problems get surfaced very quickly. And the other thing that we've built, and this is kind of secret, but it's not secret at all. You can read about it on Wikipedia, but people don't really realize it, is that we are using artificial intelligence a little bit. And so if you guys have some time, look up Cluebot. Just search Cluebot Wikipedia. So Cluebot is an algorithm that's just machine learning, and so it looks at a human like myself. And I have what's called a watch list of articles, and I can see the changes made to them. I have a little button where I can kill the change, I can get rid of it. And so Cluebot pays attention to me when I revert and edit. And Cluebot looks at that and says, what was wrong with that edit? And so Cluebot builds up a sort of language set of problematic stuff. And so it prioritizes it in different groups, but in the end now, if you go on to say Donald Trump's page and you say Donald Trump is an idiot, I won't comment on the veracity of that, but Cluebot's going to stop you. Cluebot's not going to let that edit go through, because Cluebot knows that all caps idiot in the first line of an article is always reverted. And so there's that sort of machine learning is really cool because it empowers the editors to be more efficient and quicker at finding these problems. Sort of answer your question?
Yeah, well, and I think I was just going to say the question I had about, well, how much personal information is it okay to include if you have these very strict regulations about where your information has to come from?
Yeah.
Clearly, they were okay with the information getting out to those sources, so it's okay to include in Wikipedia. So that
right.
kind of
follows
there. Thank you.
And so, yeah, if you added sort of, and to your mom's article that she was a great lady, but she was a horrible singer, and that never showed up anywhere in the literature about your mom, that couldn't be in there. And we do have this show up all the time. People are just like, I know that. She's my mom. She's a terrible singer. And sometimes these people get very angry. They're like, why can't I put that in the article? I met this person, or I did business with this person. And so that's sort of where this sort of anyone can edit crowdsourcing meets reality, right?
What do you say to professors who strongly discourage their students from citing Wikipedia in their term papers?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'd say that they probably shouldn't be. It's a tertiary source, right? Like encyclopedias aren't, like traditional ones weren't really sort of written to be used as primary sources in research, right? They're sort of meant to synthesize knowledge for the public, right? And so, I guess it depends on what type of writing your students are doing, but if they're doing research assignments, they should be going to the primary sources or to the secondary sources. And that's how I feel about students using Wikipedia, is that they should use it for context. They should use the reference section for launchpad to research. And a lot of students, I see, Rutgers did a big undergrad study on how students were researching. That was the big thing. They put the term into Google, they'd hit the wiki article, they'd bump down to references, and they'd start opening those references. So this is sort of an undergrad study research style that's taken off. And so I sort of agree with the professors that say that it shouldn't be cited as a source, because that's not really its purpose. Its purpose is sort of to be a launch pad, well, to be a summary and a launch pad to more knowledge. And hopefully people start to use it that way. Well, if there's no more questions, one more question. I'm gonna put up listen to Wikipedia again because it's fun. Oh, I'm just going to introduce it again, just in case you missed the explanation. This is a really cool visualization a colleague of mine at the foundation built on his spare time. These are real-time edits to Wikipedia. So that's Viola Davis's article was just expanded by sort of that much, sort of by bytes. So the size of the circle is the size of the change. Anyway, sorry.
I apologize for asking a second question. If anyone else had one, I'll stop talking. But you sparked a curiosity of mine as well on this thing on Cluebot and sort of filtering. It's sort of related. So more of us have edited than written articles, I think. And one thing that's kind of caught my curiosity, I have no idea what's going on in the structure of Wikipedia behind it. I've seen sentences that look really problematic, make claims that are factually problematic, and so I make little edits and just rewrite the sentence, delete half of the sentence, make it smarter. Recently, someone then reverted my edit, and I was like, "Oh, it's on now. You're not gonna dispute a history professor's editing of 1920s facts." And so I changed it back and just sort of asserted in polite language why I thought I was right, and then it lasted. But my question is, does my account have any credibility linked to it? Does Cluebot give me any, like, over time I'm a proven source compared to that other crazy person, or is there anything behind that in like if you've had a 9-year-old account or anything like that, or how does Wikipedia work behind the scenes?
Right. So your status as an editor. There's two ways to edit Wikipedia, of course. You can create an account, have a username, and a bunch of cool tools, or you can just edit anonymously, and so your edit will actually be recorded as your IP address. But no, we only really have two classes of editors. We have editors who are older than 4 days, and editors who are younger than 4 days, and there's also a 10 edit level there. So yeah, right when you start, you're what's called not confirmed, and so your edits experienced editor could look at that and say, this is a new editor making these. But the sort of the reputation thing is all social. And so when you have an account, all of the edits you made are logged. Actually, all the edits that anyone makes are logged, but they're logged under your username. And so I found this as I started, is that people started treating me differently as I wrote articles, as I sort of built up some content. They started trusting me more. I actually went through probably got up to about 10,000 edits before I ever got reverted by anyone. And it was sort of, I just do a bit of boasting. Like when you start an account, you have a user page and you can sort of list the articles you've worked on. So I'd boast about the Adams River article and other articles I've written. And that sort of gave me currency among the editing community. They sort of said, okay, this guy hasn't screwed up too bad so far, so we hopefully don't need to watch him that closely. And so it's more social capital than any sort of technical sort of ranking system or video game type thing. But Cluebot does go after, say, someone adding the same link to every page, right? Like link spam, that's an issue, right? And so Cluebot does sort of glom onto some bad behaviors, but it doesn't make any sort of qualitative assumptions about who you are. And this is something that academics also have trouble with sometimes, is like they make an edit and perhaps they don't add a reference or something, but and someone reverts and they're just like, this is what I do for a job. Like I've read like every book on this topic and you're arguing with me. And so this is, this is part of the culture that makes some academics really sour on the idea of editing Wikipedia. This sort of social capital idea that you have to have 5,000 edits before people will respect you. And so, yeah, it is difficult. But you also have the ability to describe yourself once you create an account. So you can say, I'm a history professor, this is my area of specialty, and that will right away earn you a bit of currency. But yeah, it's social and not technical.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I will, before everybody takes off, I'll remind them about the poster session outside here at to stop by and have a chat with the grad students. And also next Friday we'll have Mark Gruhl speaking about for the Level Place, exploring opportunities for place-based climate change adaptation in Churchill, Manitoba. And then the following Friday will be a screening of the film This Changes Everything. And for those folks online, that colloquium on the 4th will not be available online because we're showing a film. And that colloquium will be in room 7212. But next week here with Mark. Thank you.